the most expensive utility bills in the country. What's the governor doing about it? We will ask him next. Welcome back. There is a cost of living crisis in America, with millions of Americans struggling to pay for housing, childcare, healthcare. Maryland's state comptroller put out a report recently saying that working-aged, middle-income households are moving away to more affordable states. So how big of a problem is that? What are you doing about it?
I mean, it is a national problem, but it is a very big problem in the state of Maryland. It's just harder to get by. And frankly, it's not fair. When I'm watching 37% of young Marylanders say that they would consider leaving the state for one reason: housing costs. When I'm watching people who are saying, I don't understand how my energy bill went from $250 to $800, it's not fair to them. And I know, I think about my mom. I look at the situation that we grew up in. I didn't grow up from a family of wealth. Like, this kind of stuff matters. In fact, my mother still to this day is like, why is my energy bill so high? So I get it every day.
And so what's your answer to your mother?
So, honestly, my answer is that we have not done enough to be able to really fortify the grid, to get more energy options. We haven't done enough when it comes to housing to be able to build more housing. And so the solutions that we have put on board, when it comes to things like energy, we've provided last year $200 million in rebates to Marylanders to make sure we're putting more money back in their pocket.
You mentioned it. I mean, the rising cost of energy, it's a problem across America. But in your state, Maryland was the most expensive state for utilities. Grayson Miller is here from Johns Hopkins University College Democrats, and he has a question on that topic for you. Grayson?
Hi, Governor. Thank you for being here. I'm a senior in college and am deciding on where to start my next chapter. Energy costs are top of mind here in Maryland when it comes to BGE in particular. I'm wondering what actions your administration can take to lower those energy costs and make Maryland more affordable for young people and working families to build their futures.
Well, first, Grayson, it's great to be with you. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is, yes, you need to stay in Maryland because we need you here. And we're very, very proud of you. I actually just recently led a delegation of both Democratic and Republican governors to the White House, and where Democrats and Republican governors were working together with the administration, and we did a statement of principles on actually pushing PJM, which is the regional grid operator for 13 states, and saying that A, we need them to streamline the projects that actually happened. They need to stop slowing down the projects, because part of the reason that you have an energy shortage is because you have this massive pipeline that they're not greenlighting. We need more projects being greenlit. The second thing we called for was we want them to have a 2-year cap on costs. That we want them to cut costs, cut the increase in costs for 2 years. Because they have got to understand their own responsibility in this. And when we're talking about PJM, it's not just Maryland, it's actually 13 states that represent this grid. And the third thing that we need for them to be able to do is to give us a seat at the table. Because right now, a lot of these decisions are being made about what energy projects get greenlit, about where the power lines going on and stuff. These things are being made without us at the table. And so you're making decisions looking at a map as if people don't live there. And so we had a very, very real and bipartisan asks for PJM to be able to help to address this issue, because I know there is nothing that we will not do to make sure we are driving down costs here in the state of Maryland, because we want you and we need you here. But we also know that so much of these things that are happening, we're going to need support from both our federal and we're going to need support from our regional partners as well in order to make those things happen.
My guest is the 63rd governor and the first black governor in Maryland's 246-year history. And he's just the third black person ever elected to the office. an Army veteran, a Rhodes Scholar, and a New York Times best-selling author. Please welcome back to the show, and for the first time, a straight shooter with yours truly, the governor of Maryland, Westmore. What's going on, big time? How are you, man? How's everything going?
Hey, sir, I'm good. Listen, I like that Capitol behind you.
Yeah,
I like that.
It looks kind of nice. It's more suited for you than me. We'll fight. One could easily argue right now. Every time I turn around over the last few days, the president of the United States is mentioning your name. And as of late, now he's brought up the whole sewage issue in the Potomac and what has transpired with there in terms of millions being dumped, millions of sewage being dumped into the Potomac River. He's pointing the finger of blame at you. How do you respond to that? How do you answer to that right now?
You know, it's not just absurd and offensive. If it weren't so serious, it would be comical. Because let's be clear what we're talking about. We're talking about the breakage of a DC pipe on federal land. Maryland has nothing to do with this. Somehow he's introduced Maryland into this conversation when this is a DC pipe on federal land. The only reason we are involved is when I first heard about this, that I instructed our teams to support Washington, D.C. in their efforts to be able to stop the damage and actually start with the rebuild. The reason I did that was twofold. One is I did not want to have any contagion that would then impact the people of the state of Maryland, because again, this is not in Maryland. The second piece is I actually believe in supporting our neighbors. And if your neighbor is in trouble, you help them. And so for the past month, when the federal government, and this is actually the federal government's responsibility, this interconnector is the responsibility of the federal government, and it's been like that for literally a century. But when the federal government decided not to act, and when the federal government was not supporting, we then contacted our partners in Washington, D.C. and say, then we'll help. And so now for the past week, the overflow situation for that pipe has now been fixed. It's been solved. However, now the president wants to get involved and say, well, if you need help, call me. Well, Mr. President, you weren't there when they actually did need help. We were. You did not do your job. We did your job. And so, frankly, you know, when the president says, well, they should just ask me nicely, my point is this. Here's my nice ask. Mr. President, please do your job so I don't have to do it for you.
And I'm interested in knowing the reason I asked the question is because I think it was today or yesterday they had a press conference about you. They had a press conference about the Potomac River. I'm like, wait a minute now. I mean, we've seen Caroline Levitt out there talking about the incompetence on the part of the governor of Maryland and all of this other stuff. And I'm saying to myself, okay, could it be another distractionary measure? That wouldn't be of a surprise. Or is the fact that we're hearing the governor being mentioned more and more indication that essentially Governor Westmore is on the mind of the president of the United States because of whatever reason? I mean, what do you say to all of that right now?
Well, I'd say, unfortunately, it is a distraction because while he's talking about a pipe that has nothing to do with Maryland, that is a DC pipe on federal land, do you know what he's not talking about? How he's actually going to address your rising energy prices. You know what he's not talking about? How he's going to address the fact that beef is up 19%. That he's not addressing the fact that you have aluminum that is up 23%, or the fact that you have fertilizer for our families that is up double digits. He's not addressing the fact that you have a housing crisis in this country, and people cannot afford to live close to where they work, close to where they go to school, close to where they worship. He's not talking about that. What he's talking about is why the governor of Maryland is to blame for a broken pipe in D.C. that sits on federal land. And so this is a complete distraction about the fact that he is giving millionaires tax breaks. He's giving his friends tax breaks, while for the rest of us, we're just watching the cost of everything continue to rise.
With all those categories that you brought up, you talk about energy, you're talking about beef and stuff like that, what level of culpability does the president of the United States truly have in issues like you just highlighted?
Well, the president had...
Let's drain the swamp and drain Trump with it. He is the swamp. The whole Republican administration. Caroline Levitt.
those categories that you brought up, you talk about energy, you're talking about beef and stuff like that. What level of culpability does the President of the United States truly have in issues like you just highlighted?
Well, the President of the United States has significant responsibility because of tariff policies. So, so when you talk to our farmers over in Maryland, and listen, agriculture is the #1 industry inside of the state of Maryland. We spend quite a bit of time with our farmers and in our farming communities and ask them about what has been the impact of tariffs on everything from soy to all the other farming equipment that they need, to things like fertilizer. That's all tariffs when they're watching this jump in price. When we're talking about things like, supermarkets, the reason that we're watching the price jump in supermarkets is because we're watching the cost of goods continue to increase, which is then driving up prices. And so, but despite that fact, what we're doing, for example, in the state of Maryland is I've introduced legislation that goes against price manipulation, where we were seeing how people's data was being used against them when they went into supermarkets. And supermarkets were able to adjust prices literally by the second when they saw a person going for individual products that they're used to buying because they know that they would pay more for it. And so I've actually introduced legislation now in the state of Maryland that makes that illegal, that you cannot price gouge people when you know that they, especially for our working parents, they have but a matter of time to be able to shop for their families. Do not manipulate the prices on them because you know that they cannot come back at another time. And so we're doing everything we can do to try to keep prices low, to try to address the cost of living for the people in our states. But there is no doubt that people are not confused that when they're watching this jump in prices on everything from energy to the price of goods to the price of materials, that is a direct correlation to the economic policies that we're seeing from the White House and these tariff policies that continue to make it harder for people.
We're talking to the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, right?